It started like so many love stories do in the digital age: a swipe, a message, a connection. April Holt and Donovan seemed like the perfect match, and soon they became one of TikTok's favorite couples. Their videos were filled with laughter, choreographed dances, and heartfelt glimpses into their lives. April, a mother of two with a radiant smile, had an authenticity that drew people in. She made you feel like you knew her, like you were a part of her world. But here's the thing about social media. It's all about what people want you to see. And what April's followers didn't see, or maybe what some chose to ignore, was the strain hidden between the lines, the tension just outside the frame. Those cracks, they were real, and they were widening. On a warm July evening, everything changed. April Holt's bathroom door was shut. Inside, her life ended in a way no one could have prepared for. And the person closest to her became the center of a chilling investigation. How could a love that seemed so bright take such a dark turn? What really happened in that bathroom? And why was her husband, the man she trusted above all, acting so calm when the truth finally came out? This is the story of April Holt, a life celebrated on screen but shattered in private. And by the end of it, you'll be left wondering, how well do we really know the people we let into our lives? April Holt was the kind of person who could light up a room without even trying. Born in 1994, she grew up surrounded by family and friends who adored her. She had this knack for making people feel seen, understood, and valued, a rare quality that would one day make her a social media sensation. But before TikTok, April was just a young woman navigating the challenges of life. A mother of two, she worked tirelessly to give her children the love and care they deserved. Those who knew her described her as resilient and compassionate, someone who wore her heart on her sleeve. She wasn't afraid to laugh at herself or share the messiness of motherhood, a trait that would later endear her to hundreds of thousands of strangers. Her journey to TikTok fame began in 2018. At first, it was just a creative outlet, a place to share bits of her life, her thoughts, and her unwavering belief in positivity. April wasn't trying to be a star. She was just being herself. She'd post videos about mindfulness and self-care, blending her spiritual beliefs with relatable humor and heartfelt messages. And people loved her for it. Her followers grew rapidly. They weren't just there for the trendy dances or viral challenges. They came for April, the woman who talked about overcoming struggles with authenticity, the mom who wasn't afraid to admit that some days were harder than others. By 2023, April had built a loyal community of over 200,000 followers who looked to her for inspiration. But April wasn't alone in her rise to TikTok stardom. Along with her was Donovan Holt. Donovan was charming, confident, and seemingly devoted to April. Their love story played out like a modern-day fairy tale. They met, fell in love, and soon became the internet's favorite couple. Together they brought a playful energy to the platform, joining viral trends and sharing candid glimpses into their life as husband and wife. To their audience, they seemed perfect, like two puzzle pieces that just fit. April would post sweet tributes to Donovan, calling him her rock and her partner in crime. Their chemistry felt genuine. They had a way of making their followers believe in love again, even in a world where relationships often felt disposable. But here's the thing about social media: it's a stage, and everyone's playing a role. What happens when the cameras are off, when the likes and comments fade into silence? For April and Donovan, the answers were far more complicated than anyone could have guessed. April's followers saw the couple dancing in their kitchen, laughing at inside jokes, and sharing parenting wins. What they didn't see, or maybe couldn't see, were the cracks forming beneath the surface. Donovan's charm masked a darker side, one that only those closest to April would later speak about in hushed tones. There were arguments, moments of tension, and signs that their relationship wasn't as picture-perfect as it seemed. Still, April tried to hold it all together. She was the glue for her family, the bright light that refused to dim, even when life got hard. And maybe that's why it was so easy for her followers to believe the narrative she shared online. It wasn't just content, it was hope, carefully packaged into bite-sized videos. But life isn't a TikTok reel. It's messy, unpredictable, and sometimes heartbreakingly cruel. April's journey to internet fame was one of triumph and connection, but it would also become a haunting reminder of how little we truly know about the lives we follow online. By the summer of 2023, the cracks that had been quietly forming in April and Donovan's marriage would shatter completely. And the consequences, they were devastating. For April Holt's thousands of TikTok followers, her life seemed like a dream, a picture-perfect marriage, adorable kids, and a home filled with love and laughter. But if you watch closely, you'd start to notice something was off. Small things at first, but enough to raise questions. It started with her videos. April, who was once consistent with her cheerful posts and heartfelt advice, began deleting videos, specifically ones featuring her husband Donovan. The reasons were never explained. One day, a sweet couple's dance video would disappear. Another day, a video of them joking around in the kitchen was gone. Her followers noticed, and while some brushed it off as just a social media whim, others began to speculate. Why erase the moments that made her audience fall in love with their story in the first place? And then, there were her captions. Once filled with affirmations and positivity, they began to shift. April occasionally posted cryptic messages like, "Sometimes you can't fix what's broken," or, "It's exhausting pretending everything's fine." They were subtle, almost easy to miss. But for those who paid attention, they were a clear departure from her usual tone. Her audience wasn't the only one noticing these changes. Close friends began to pick up on shifts in April's demeanor. She, who had always been so bubbly and full of life, seemed quieter, more reserved. Friends described her as distracted, as if her mind was constantly somewhere else. Invitations to hang out were met with polite declines, and when she did show up, she'd often glance at her phone or excuse herself to step outside, saying Donovan had called. And it wasn't just her behavior that changed. Behind closed doors, those closest to her saw cracks in her marriage that her followers could never imagine. Friends started to notice how Donovan spoke to her short, sharp comments that seemed designed to belittle. There were stories of him getting upset over small things, if she spent too long with friends, if she posted a video without consulting him, or even if she wore something he didn't approve of. Family members, especially her mother, Jamie Dickerson, were growing increasingly concerned. Jamie had always been close to April. They'd talk about everything: her kids, her dreams, her plans for the future. But over time, those conversations changed. April became evasive, brushing off questions about her relationship with vague reassurances like "Donovan's just stressed," or "It's nothing to worry about." Jamie wasn't convinced. She could hear the hesitation in her daughter's voice, the way it wavered when she spoke about her husband. Then there were the stories that came out later. Moments April had confided to her closest friends, but never shared with the world. She told one friend about a time Donovan had flown into a rage over a video she posted, accusing her of making him look foolish. Another time, he had demanded she cancel plans with a group of girlfriends, insisting she stay home instead. These weren't isolated incidents, they were part of a pattern. And the more April tried to keep the peace, the more control Donovan seemed to exert. April's loved ones began to piece things together. The canceled plans, the sudden mood changes, the way she started apologizing for everything, even when she hadn't done anything wrong. To them, it was clear she was walking on eggshells. But April, ever the optimist, always found a way to downplay the seriousness of the situation. "It's just a rough patch," she'd say. Or, "He's under a lot of pressure." But those reassurances didn't ease the growing worry in her mother's heart. And then there was the last time Jamie saw her daughter before the tragedy unfolded. April seemed distant, distracted, like she had something on her mind but couldn't bring herself to say it. Jamie pressed her, asking if everything was okay. April hesitated, then smiled a forced, tired smile and said, "I'm fine, Mom. Really." But Jamie knew better. That smile wasn't the one April wore in her TikTok videos. It was the smile of someone trying desperately to hold it together. The cracks were there for anyone who cared to look. The deleted videos, the cryptic captions, the strained conversations. To her audience, April was still the queen of TikTok, living a life others could only dream of. But to those who truly knew her, she was a woman carrying a heavy, invisible burden, one that was about to shatter everything she had worked so hard to build. It was the night of July 28th, 2023. Inside the Holt home in Antioch, Tennessee, tension was thick, and a storm of emotions brewed behind closed doors. According to neighbors, there had been no outward signs of disturbance, no loud arguments echoing through the night. But inside the house, a confrontation between April and Donovan had escalated. Details of what led to the argument remain unclear. Friends later speculated that ongoing issues in their marriage might have reached a breaking point that night. Witnesses and texts from the days prior suggested mounting tension between the two, though no one could have predicted the outcome. Hours into the evening, Donovan claimed that April had become upset and retreated to the bathroom, shutting the door behind her. He said she was gone for an unusually long time, prompting him to check on her. When he discovered her inside, lifeless and unresponsive, he alleged that she had harmed herself. But there were no signs of panic in Donovan's demeanor, no desperate calls for help. Instead, he calmly directed their 7-year-old son to check on April in the bathroom, a disturbing and calculated decision. It was the child who discovered his mother lying on the floor. When first responders arrived at the Holt residence, the scene was grim. April was found on the bathroom floor, a plastic bag secured over her head with tape. The room was eerily quiet, the air heavy with the weight of tragedy. Investigators immediately noted the unsettling details. There were no signs of a struggle, no overturned objects, no visible injuries that would suggest an altercation had occurred in that space. The placement of the bag and the way it was taped raised immediate questions among authorities. It seemed deliberate, methodical, almost too clean to align with the explanation Donovan had provided. Yet, in those initial moments, it was treated as a possible suicide, tragic but self-inflicted. But subtle inconsistencies stood out. Why were April's fingerprints absent from the plastic bag and tape? Why was there no evidence of her having prepared the materials herself? The more investigators scrutinized the scene, the less it seemed to align with the narrative Donovan offered. The 911 call from Donovan was oddly composed. Dispatchers later remarked that his calmness seemed out of place, but at the time they focused on sending help as quickly as possible. Paramedics arrived within minutes, rushing into the home to assess April's condition. Despite their best efforts to revive her, it was too late. April was pronounced dead shortly after being transported to the hospital. Her death, at first glance, appeared to be a tragic suicide. Authorities questioned Donovan at the scene, and while his answers were measured, they left gaps that would later prove critical. He described April as being emotionally distressed, claiming she had locked herself in the bathroom after their argument. As investigators began piecing together the events of that night, their focus shifted. The inconsistencies in Donovan's account and the physical evidence in the bathroom would eventually unravel his story, leading to a confession that would reveal the horrifying truth about what had really happened to April Holt. In the days following April Holt's death, the official narrative of suicide left her family devastated and unconvinced. April's mother, Jamie Dickerson, refused to accept that her vibrant, loving daughter would end her own life. Jamie had known her daughter's struggles, but April had always been resilient, finding strength in her children and her online community. Something about the scene simply didn't add up. Jamie immediately began digging deeper, determined to uncover the truth. As law enforcement initially treated the case as a suicide, Jamie's instincts told her otherwise. She combed through every detail: police reports, autopsy results, and even April's digital footprints. What she found were glaring inconsistencies, ones that pointed toward a more troubling conclusion. The key turning point came when Jamie, relentless in her pursuit of answers, managed to obtain phone recordings of conversations with Donovan. In these recordings, Donovan admitted that April had not killed herself. He claimed that they had an argument that night, and things got out of hand. His confession, though partial and evasive, was enough to shatter the carefully constructed facade he had presented to police. Jamie's suspicions also led her to demand a closer look at the evidence from the scene. Forensic analysis revealed critical details that had initially been overlooked. The plastic bag found over April's head, taped securely in place, had no fingerprints belonging to her. Instead, the only fingerprints present were Donovan's. This discovery contradicted the notion of suicide and suggested a deliberate act of foul play. Investigators began to reconstruct the events of that night with this new evidence in hand. Donovan's claims of April locking herself in the bathroom and harming herself unraveled as forensic experts highlighted the inconsistencies in his story. The methodical placement of the bag and tape was more indicative of staging than a spontaneous act. Moreover, text messages between April and Donovan from the weeks leading up to her death revealed a strained relationship. In these exchanges, Donovan's controlling and accusatory tone became evident. As news of the investigation broke, the TikTok community and the broader public were stunned. April Holt, who had once been a beacon of positivity and resilience to her 200,000 followers, was now at the center of a heartbreaking and complex case. Tributes poured in across social media, with users sharing April's videos and reflecting on her legacy. The hashtag #JusticeForApril began trending as her followers demanded accountability for what they now understood to be a murder. The revelation that Donovan was a suspect sent shockwaves through April's fanbase. To them, he had been a loving husband, a frequent and seemingly happy participant in her videos. Many struggled to reconcile the image of the man they had seen online with the actions he was now accused of. Anger, disbelief, and grief permeated discussions across platforms, and April's story became a rallying cry for domestic violence awareness. Jamie Dickerson, meanwhile, found herself thrust into the spotlight. Her tenacity in uncovering the truth was widely praised, with many calling her a hero for ensuring her daughter's story didn't end as a tragic misunderstanding. The public rallied around her, offering support and amplifying her voice as she continued to fight for justice. The recordings Jamie obtained, paired with forensic evidence and witness testimonies, ultimately led to Donovan's confession. Confronted with the mounting evidence, he admitted to staging April's death as a suicide. The calm, calculated demeanor he had maintained in the aftermath of her death was revealed to be part of a deliberate cover-up, an attempt to deflect suspicion and protect himself. For Jamie Dickerson, the truth came at an unimaginable cost. But her relentless pursuit ensured that April's voice was not silenced. Her determination not only exposed the lies but also gave April the justice she deserved. The case became a haunting reminder of how appearances can be deceiving, and how a mother's love and persistence can uncover the truth, no matter how deeply it is buried. The trial of Donovan Holt was one that captivated not only the courtroom but also the nation. It wasn't just about the tragic loss of April Holt, it was about exposing the lies, manipulation, and betrayal that had concealed the truth for so long. The quiet, composed demeanor Donovan had displayed in the months following April's death stood in stark contrast to the gravity of the charges now leveled against him: reckless homicide, tampering with evidence, and false reporting. As the trial began, the tension in the air was almost unbearable. The prosecution wasted no time laying out the damning evidence against Donovan. They began with the forensic findings, meticulously explained by experts. The plastic bag and tape found at the scene bore no fingerprints from April, a detail that directly contradicted the notion of suicide. Instead, Donovan's fingerprints were the only ones present, and a careful placement of the tape suggested deliberate staging. It was a chilling revelation that set the tone for the trial. The courtroom grew especially tense when Jamie Dickerson, April's mother, was called to the stand. Jamie's voice trembled as she recounted her daughter's life, her love for her children, and the growing concern she'd had about her marriage to Donovan. She spoke of April's subtle cries for help, the cryptic messages she shared, and the gut-wrenching moment she found out her daughter was gone. Jamie's heartbreak was palpable, and her testimony left many in the courtroom in tears. But the most pivotal moment came when the prosecution introduced the phone recordings Jamie had obtained. The jury sat in silence as Donovan's voice filled the room. In the recordings, Donovan could be heard admitting, in his own words, that April did not kill herself. His attempts to justify his actions, to frame them as an accident that had gone too far, only further implicated him. The weight of his confession was inescapable, and the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted palpably. Even the defense team seemed visibly shaken. The defense faced an uphill battle from the very start. Their strategy relied on portraying Donovan as a man overwhelmed by stress, financial struggles, the pressures of family life, and the perceived strain of living in the public eye. Through April's TikTok fame, they argued that Donovan had acted impulsively in the heat of an argument, and that the events of that night were an unintended consequence of an emotional outburst, not a premeditated crime. They attempted to shift the focus away from Donovan's actions after April's death, framing his staging of the scene as a desperate, irrational decision made in a state of panic. But their argument crumbled under the weight of the evidence. The prosecution systematically dismantled each claim, pointing to the meticulous nature of the staging and Donovan's calm, calculated demeanor in the hours following April's death. They emphasized the months of control and manipulation leading up to the tragedy, painting a picture of a man who had spent years eroding his wife's autonomy and confidence. The prosecution also brought forward friends and family members who testified about Donovan's controlling behavior. They described his temper, his jealousy, and the isolation he imposed on April. Messages and texts between the couple were presented as evidence, showcasing a pattern of emotional abuse that had escalated over time. Each piece of evidence built on the next, painting an irrefutable picture of a man who had not only taken his wife's life, but had also meticulously tried to cover his tracks. After weeks of testimony, cross-examinations, and emotional revelations, the case was handed to the jury. For hours, they deliberated, combing through the evidence, weighing the words of witnesses, and replaying the chilling recordings of Donovan's confession. The courtroom sat in a state of hushed anticipation, every person waiting for the moment that would decide the outcome of the trial. When the jury finally returned, the four persons stood to deliver their decision guilty. Donovan Holt was convicted on charges of reckless homicide, tampering with evidence, and false reporting. As the verdict was read, audible sobs filled the room. For April's family, it was a moment of both relief and heartbreak. Justice had been served, but it could never bring her back. During sentencing, the judge addressed Donovan directly, condemning his actions as not only a betrayal of his wife, but also of the trust placed in him as a father and partner. Donovan was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, ensuring he would face the consequences of his actions for years to come. For Jamie Dickerson, the verdict brought a measure of closure but not an end to the pain. She spoke to the press after the trial, sharing her gratitude for the support she had received and her commitment to honoring April's memory. Jamie vowed to use her daughter's story to raise awareness about the dangers of domestic abuse, hoping to prevent other families from enduring similar tragedies. The case of April Holt became a symbol, a reminder of how appearances can be deceiving and how the truth, no matter how deeply buried, can be uncovered through perseverance and determination. In the end, the trial was not just about holding Donovan accountable. It was about ensuring April's voice was heard, her story was told, and her legacy was preserved. And thanks to her mother's unwavering love and strength, justice was not just pursued, it was achieved. In the wake of April Holt's tragic death, her family was thrust into a maelstrom of grief and public attention. Her mother, Jamie Dickerson, who had been instrumental in uncovering the truth behind April's demise, found herself grappling with herself mornings of mourning her daughter and navigating the legal aftermath. April's children, a 12-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son, faced the incomprehensible reality of losing their mother. The family, rallying together, sought to provide them with a semblance of normalcy amidst the chaos. Counseling and support from loved ones became pivotal in helping them process their loss and begin the arduous journey toward healing. In an effort to support April's family during this difficult time, a GoFundMe campaign was established. The funds raised aimed to alleviate financial burdens and assist with the children's future needs. The outpouring of generosity from both acquaintances and strangers alike was a testament to the profound impact April had on those around her. Jamie Dickerson, embodying resilience, also turned to social media to share her journey. She posted updates on the case, memories of April, and messages of gratitude toward supporters. Her transparency fostered a sense of solidarity, inspiring others to share their own experiences with loss and to advocate for justice in their communities. The convergence of personal grief and public support created a unique space where April's life was celebrated, her story was told, and her legacy was cemented. Through the unwavering efforts of her family and the collective mourning of her followers, April Holt's memory continues to inspire and resonate, shedding light on the pervasive issue of domestic violence and the importance of seeking justice for its victims. April Holt's story is one that stays with you, a reminder of how fragile life can be and how the truth is often hidden beneath the surface. On TikTok, she appeared to have it all: a loving family, a joyful marriage, and a platform where she inspired thousands. But behind the curated smiles and perfectly crafted videos lay a reality far more complex. Her death revealed the cracks we so often miss in seemingly perfect lives. It exposed the dangers of ignoring subtle warning signs and the devastating consequences of silence. April's story challenges us to look deeper, to ask harder questions, and to refuse to take appearances at face value. How many more Aprils are out there, hiding behind curated smiles? How many stories are left untold because fear and control keep them in the dark? We owe it to April and others like her to make sure their voices are heard, to ensure their pain doesn't go unnoticed, and to fight for a world where no one suffers in silence. What do you think? What warning signs should we all watch out for in relationships? Let's discuss in the comments. Your perspective could help someone else recognize what they might not see themselves. If you found April's story important, don't forget to like this video and share it. Awareness can be the first step toward prevention. And if you want more stories that shed light on the truth and bring justice to those who can no longer speak for themselves, subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching, for listening, and for keeping April's memory alive. Together we can make a difference.